The stars had never looked so cold. Princess Valkyra pressed her hand against the frozen viewport of her shuttle and watched her homeworld grow smaller. The planet Cythera glowed like a blue jewel against the darkness of space. She had loved that world. She had been born in its crystal palaces. She had walked through its gardens of living light. And now she would never see it again. Behind her, the shuttle's warning system screamed. The engines were failing. The life support was damaged. She had maybe 2 days of air left, perhaps less. But none of that mattered as much as the blood on her hands. It was not her blood. 3 hours ago, she had been in her father's throne room. Emperor Kethvorin had been a good ruler. He was wise and kind. He had led the Scythani Empire for 200 years with patience and grace. The Scythani were an ancient species. Their bodies glowed with inner light. They lived for thousands of years. They had mastered technologies that other species could not even imagine. And they were feared across the galaxy. But even emperors could be betrayed. Her uncle Zorath had walked into the throne room with 50 soldiers at his back. Valkyra remembered the look on her father's face. It was not surprise. It was sadness. He had known this day would come. He had seen the darkness growing in his brother's heart for decades. "You do not need to do this," her father had said. His voice was calm. "The throne will pass to you when I am gone. You need only wait." Zorath had laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Wait? I have waited 300 years, brother. I am tired of waiting. The Scythani Empire grows weak under your rule. You speak of peace when we should speak of conquest. You offer friendship to lesser species when we should offer them chains. The galaxy does not need another war," her father replied. "The galaxy does not know what it needs. But I do." Zorath raised his hand. The soldiers lifted their weapons, and Valkyra had watched her father die. She did not scream. She did not cry. There was no time for grief. Her mother grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the hidden passage behind the throne. The Empress had always been practical. She had prepared for this moment. "Take this," her mother said, pressing a small crystal into her palm. "It contains everything. Zorath's communications with the Vorax Dominion, his plans for conquest, his list of allies and traitors. Get this to the Galactic Conclave. They must know what he intends. Mother, come with me. I cannot. Someone must stay behind to slow them down." The Empress touched her daughter's face. Her fingers left trails of soft light on Valkyra's skin. "You are the last hope of our people now. Do not let your father's death be meaningless." The soldiers broke through the door. The Empress turned to face them, and Valkyra ran. She ran through passages that had not been used in centuries. She ran past guards who did not yet know about the coup. She ran until she reached the private shuttle bay, where her personal ship waited. She launched into space just as Zorath's warships began to seal the planet. Now she drifted alone in the cold darkness between stars. Her shuttle was never meant for long journeys. It was a pleasure craft, designed for short trips between Cythera and its moons. The engines had burned out during her escape. The communication system was damaged. She had managed to send one message before it failed completely, a call for help. She had broadcast it on all frequencies, hoping someone would hear. She had explained who she was. She had explained what had happened. She had offered the information on her crystal in exchange for sanctuary. Surely someone would come. Surely one of the great powers of the galaxy would see the value in what she offered. Hours passed. No one came. Valkyra accessed the galactic news feeds through her shuttle's weak receivers. What she saw broke her heart. The Galactic Conclave had met. The 12 most powerful species in known space had gathered to discuss her fate. She watched the recordings of their debate with growing horror. "This is an internal matter for the Scythani Empire," said the Valorian ambassador. "We have no right to interfere." "The princess offers valuable intelligence," argued a Kethari diplomat. "We should at least consider." "Consider what?" interrupted the representative from the Dothrani Federation. "War with the Scythani. Their fleet could destroy our worlds in a matter of days. Are you willing to sacrifice billions of your people for one refugee?" The debate went on for hours. Species that had traded with her father for centuries refused to speak in her defense. Old allies suddenly remembered pressing business elsewhere. Fear filled the great chamber like a poison. And then came the final vote. "No member species shall render aid to the fugitive Valkyra," announced the conclave's speaker. "The matter is internal to the Scythani Empire. Any species that interferes will face sanctions and potential expulsion from the conclave." Valkyra turned off the feed. She sat in the darkness of her dying shuttle and felt something inside her break. She had believed in the conclave. She had believed that the great powers of the galaxy stood for justice and order. Her father had spent his life building bridges between species. He had believed that cooperation was the path to peace, and now those same species had abandoned his daughter to die. She thought about the Vorax Dominion. They were monsters. They consumed entire worlds. They enslaved species and stripped planets bare. And her uncle had made a deal with them. The crystal in her hand contained proof of that alliance. If Zorath succeeded, if he united the Sithani Empire with the Vorax, the galaxy would burn. But the Conclave did not care. They were too afraid. Valkyra leaned back in her seat and closed her eyes. The cold was getting worse. The shuttle's heating systems were failing. Her people could survive in the vacuum of space for short periods, but not forever. Without help, she would die here, alone. Forgotten. She thought about her mother. Was she still alive? Had Zorath killed her too? Valkyra hoped the Empress had been imprisoned rather than executed. Zorath was cruel, but he was also practical. A living hostage was more valuable than a dead enemy. The shuttle drifted on. Stars wheeled slowly past the viewport. Somewhere out there, her uncle was consolidating his power. Somewhere out there, the Vorax were preparing for war. And somewhere out there, the civilized galaxy was looking the other way. Valkyra did not know how long she sat in the darkness. Time lost meaning. The cold seeped into her bones. Her light began to dim. Sithani only glowed brightly when they were healthy and strong. As death approached, their light faded. She was fading now. Her last thought before sleep took her was simple. Perhaps it was better this way. Perhaps dying alone in the void was preferable to watching the galaxy burn. But the universe was not finished with Valkyra yet. Deep in the unfashionable outer arm of the galaxy, in a region of space that the great powers considered barely worth noticing, a small patrol ship picked up her distress signal. The ship was old and battered. Its crew was small. Its species had only been part of the galactic community for 43 years. They were called humans. And they were about to change everything. Captain Alara Vance had seen better days. Her ship had seen better decades. The UES Defiance was a patrol frigate, one of the oldest still in service. It had been built 60 years ago, back when humanity first started exploring beyond their home system. The design was outdated. The weapons were weak by galactic standards. The hull was patched in so many places that the engineering crew had started naming the patches after old Earth cities. But the Defiance still flew, and its crew still served. Alara stood on the bridge and watched the stars drift past on the main view screen. They were running escort duty along the border of human space, protecting cargo ships from pirates. It was boring work, important, but boring. Captain, we're picking up something strange. Alara turned to look at her communications officer, a young woman named Sarah Chen. Sarah was fresh out of the academy, barely 22 years old. This was her first deep space assignment. Strange how? Alara asked. It's a distress signal, but it's not in any human language. The computer is translating it now. Sarah's eyes went wide as she read the translation. Captain, you need to see this. Alara walked over to the communications station and read the message on the screen. Her expression did not change, but her heart began to beat faster. Get me Commander Cole, she said quietly. Commander Darius Cole arrived on the bridge 3 minutes later. He was a tall man with gray at his temples and scars on his hands. He had served in the Defiance for 15 years. He knew the ship better than he knew his own apartment back on Earth. What's going on? He asked. Alara handed him a datapad with the translated message. Cole read it twice. Then he looked up at his captain. This is real? The signal matches Sithani communication protocols. It's real. Cole let out a long breath. The Sithani princess. The one the whole galaxy is talking about. The one the whole galaxy is ignoring. Alara corrected. She pulled up the Conclave's broadcast on the main screen. The entire bridge crew watched in silence as the speaker announced the decision. No aid. No interference. The princess was on her own. Well, said Cole when the recording ended. That's that, I suppose. Alara did not respond. She was staring at the navigation display, calculating distances and travel times. Captain? Cole stepped closer and lowered his voice. I know that look. Whatever you're thinking, it's a bad idea. Probably. The Conclave has forbidden any species from helping her. If we interfere, Earth could be sanctioned. We could be expelled from the galactic community. We've only been members for 43 years. We're already considered primitives by most species. This would make things worse. I know. The Scythony Empire could consider it an act of war. Their ships make ours look like toys. They could wipe out every human colony in a matter of weeks. I know. Cole sighed. You're still thinking about doing it, aren't you? Alara finally turned to look at him. Her eyes were calm but determined. Her shuttle is failing. She has maybe a day of life support left. She's alone out there, Darius. Alone and afraid and dying. And no one is coming to help her. That's not our problem. Then whose problem is it? Cole had no answer for that. Alara turned to face her crew. There were 42 people on the Defiance. Pilots and engineers, doctors and soldiers. Some were young like Sarah Chen. Others were veterans with decades of service. They all watched their captain with curious eyes. You've all heard the message, Alara said. You all know what the Conclave has decided. I'm not going to order anyone to do something that could start a war. So I'm asking instead. She paused. The bridge was silent. There's a woman out there who needs help. She's not human. She's not our ally. Helping her will probably get us in trouble. It might get us killed. The smart thing to do is to ignore her signal and continue our patrol. Alara looked at each of her crew members in turn. But I've never been very smart. I became a starship captain because I believed in something. I believed that we explore space not to conquer, but to connect. I believed that when someone is in trouble, you help them, even if it's hard, even if it's dangerous, even if no one else will. She straightened her shoulders. I'm going to help her. Anyone who wants to leave can take the shuttle back to the nearest station. No one will think less of you. But if you want to stay, if you want to do something that matters, then stay at your posts. No one moved. Sarah Chen spoke first. Her voice was shaky but clear. I didn't join the fleet to run away from hard choices, Captain. Marcus Webb, the pilot, laughed. Besides, what's the Conclave going to do? Kick us out? Half those species think we're barely civilized anyway. One by one, the crew voiced their support. Cole shook his head slowly, but a small smile played at the corner of his mouth. You're going to get us all killed, he said. Probably. Alara agreed. But we'll die doing something right. She turned back to the navigation display. Plot an intercept course for the princess's last known position. Maximum speed. Maximum speed will burn out our engines in 12 hours, the engineer reported. Then we'd better find her in 11. The Defiance changed course. Its old engines roared to life with a sound that was half power, half prayer. The ship shot forward into the darkness, leaving the safe borders of human space behind. In her quarters that night, Alara wrote a message to Earth Command. She explained what she was doing and why. She did not ask for permission. She did not expect approval. She simply stated the facts and let the politicians decide how to respond. The response came 3 hours later. It was short and direct. Captain Vance, you are ordered to stand down immediately. Do not approach the Sithani shuttle. Do not engage with the refugee. Return to your patrol route and await further instructions. This is not humanity's fight. Alara read the message twice. Then she deleted it. She walked back to the bridge and found Cole waiting for her. Orders from Earth? He asked. They want us to turn back. Cole nodded slowly. And what are we going to do? Alara sat down in her captain's chair and looked out at the stars. Somewhere ahead of them, a young woman was dying alone. The whole galaxy knew she was there. The whole galaxy had decided to look away, but not the Defiance. Not today. We're going to keep going, Alara said. We're going to find her. And we're going to save her life. Cole smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. The Defiance flew on through the darkness. Behind them, the comfortable safety of human space grew distant. Ahead of them, danger waited. But also purpose, also meaning, also the chance to do something that mattered. Alara did not know if they would succeed. She did not know if they would survive. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would rather die trying to help than live knowing she had turned away. The shuttle was dark when they found it. Alara watched through the viewport as the Defiance pulled alongside the small Sithani craft. It was beautiful, even damaged. The hull was made of some crystalline material that caught the starlight and scattered it into rainbows. But the engines were dead. No lights showed through the windows. No power signatures registered on their sensors. Life signs? She asked. Dr. James Morrison checked his scanner. He was the ship's medical officer, a gray-haired man who had seen too much death in his long career. His face was grim. One life sign. Very weak. She's hypothermic and barely breathing. If we'd arrived an hour later. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Get a team ready, Alara ordered. I want her on this ship in the next 10 minutes. The rescue team worked quickly. They cut through the shuttle's emergency airlock and found the princess slumped in her pilot's seat. Her skin was pale blue, and her natural glow had faded to almost nothing. She looked fragile. Young, afraid. They carried her back to the Defiance and rushed her to the medical bay. Dr. Morrison worked for 3 hours to stabilize her condition. The crew waited outside, speaking in hushed voices. When Morrison finally emerged, his face was tired but hopeful. She'll live, he announced. But she needs rest. Her body went through severe trauma. The hypothermia nearly killed her. Alara let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. When can I talk to her? Give her a few hours. She's sleeping now. Those few hours stretched into an eternity. Alara paced the bridge, unable to sit still. Cole watched her with concern. You should rest, Captain. You've been awake for 20 hours. I'll rest when I know she's okay. Cole shook his head but didn't argue. He had served with Alara for 8 years. He knew when she had made up her mind. Finally, Morrison called from the medical bay. She's awake, Captain, and she's asking to see whoever rescued her. Alara walked to the medical bay alone. She found the princess sitting up in bed, wrapped in a thermal blanket. Valkyra's glow was returning slowly, soft blue light pulsing beneath her translucent skin. Her eyes were large and golden, like twin suns. Those eyes widened when Alara entered the room. You are human, Valkyra said. Her voice was musical, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. I have never met a human before. I'm Captain Alara Vance, of the UES Defiance. Alara replied. She pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down. How are you feeling? Valkyra stared at her for a long moment, confused. I sent my distress call to the entire galaxy. The Valorians received it. The Cathari received it. The Dothrani received it. All the great powers of civilized space received it. She paused. But a human ship answered. A species I have never heard of. From a region of space I have never visited. We were in the area. That is not an explanation. Alara smiled slightly. No, I suppose it isn't. A crew member arrived with a tray of food. Simple things, soup, bread, water. Valkyra looked at the food with suspicion. What is this? Dinner. You haven't eaten in days. The doctor says you need to regain your strength. Valkyra did not touch the food. What do you want in return? Nothing. That is impossible. Everyone wants something. What is your price? The data crystal? Political alliance? Access to Scythani technology? Alara leaned back in her chair. I just want you to eat your soup before it gets cold. Valkyra's confusion deepened. She looked at the food. She looked at the human captain. She looked around the small medical bay with its simple equipment and plain walls. Your ship is very old, she said finally. It is. Your species is very young. You have been part of the galactic community for less than 50 years. 43 years, actually. You have no seat on the conclave. You have no powerful allies. Your territory is small. Your technology is primitive by our standards. Valkyra's voice grew more intense. The conclave has forbidden any species from helping me. If my uncle learns what you have done, he will destroy your worlds. He will kill millions of your people. Your entire species could be wiped out because of this decision. Alara nodded calmly. Yes, we know. Then why? Valkyra's composure finally cracked. Why would you risk everything for a stranger? Why would you sacrifice your future for someone you have never met? It makes no sense. Alara was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke softly. Because you were alone. Because you were afraid. Because you needed help. And no one else was coming. She met the princess's golden eyes with her own steady gaze. Where I come from. That's reason enough. Valkyra stared at her. Something in her expression shifted. The suspicion faded. In its place came something that looked almost like wonder. Your species is very strange, she whispered. We get that a lot. The alarm sirens shattered the moment. Red lights flashed throughout the ship. Cole's voice crackled over the intercom. Captain to the bridge. We have a problem. Alara was on her feet instantly. Stay here, she told Valkyra. You're safe. She ran to the bridge and found her crew staring at the tactical display with horror in their eyes. 3 contacts had appeared at the edge of sensor range. They were massive, they were fast, and they were heading directly for the Defiance. Scythony warships, Cole reported. 3 of them. The lead ship is the Eternal Dawn Regent Zorath's personal flagship. Ilara felt ice form in her stomach. How long until they intercept us? At their current speed? 9 hours. And how far are we from Mira's Veil? Mira's Veil was a neutral space station, protected by treaties that even the Scythani respected. If they could reach it, Zorath couldn't touch them. At least not legally. Cole checked the navigation console. 12 hours at maximum speed. Then we don't have enough time. No, Captain, we don't. The communication console beeped. An incoming transmission. Sarah Chen looked at Ilara with fear in her young eyes. It's from the Scythani flagship, Captain. Regent Zorath wants to speak with you. Ilara straightened her uniform and nodded. Put him through. The view screen flickered. A face appeared similar to Valkyra's, but harder, older, cruel. Zorath's glow was the deep red of cooling metal. His eyes burned like dying stars. Human, Captain, he said. His voice was cold and sharp. You have something that belongs to me. The princess is not property, Ilara replied. She is a person, a refugee, and she is under my protection. Zorath laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. Protection? Your tiny ship could not protect a cargo hold from my weapons. You are a primitive species playing games you do not understand. Surrender my niece, and I will let you leave. Refuse, and I will destroy you so completely that not even atoms will remain. Ilara's jaw tightened. We will not surrender her. Then you will die. The transmission ended. The bridge was silent. Cole stepped close to Ilara. He's not bluffing, Captain. Those ships could vaporize us without even slowing down. I know. We can't outrun them. We can't outfight them. I know. So what do we do? Ilara looked at her crew. 42 people who had chosen to follow her into almost certain death. They were scared. She could see it in their eyes. But they were not running. They were waiting, trusting her to find a way. She thought about Valkyra's question. Why would you risk everything for a stranger? And she thought about her answer. Because you were alone. Because you needed help. We do what we always do, Ilara said finally. We fly, we fight, we survive, and we do not give up. She turned to her pilot. Marcus, I need every bit of speed you can get from these engines. We're going to run for Mira's Veil. Marcus Webb nodded grimly. The engines won't survive. Neither will we if we don't try. The Defiance turned toward the distant station and began to run. Behind them, 3 warships followed. The hunt had begun. The Defiance screamed through space like a wounded animal. Chief Engineer Yuki Tanaka had not slept in 30 hours. Her hands were burned from hot metal. Her lungs hurt from breathing coolant fumes. But she kept working. She had to keep working. The lives of everyone aboard depended on her. We need more power to the engines. Captain Vance's voice crackled through the engine room speakers. I'm giving you everything we have, Yuki shouted back. The reactor is running at 115% capacity. Any higher, and it will explode. The Scythani are gaining on us. Yuki closed her eyes and thought. The ship was old. The technology was outdated. But technology was only part of the equation. The other part was creativity. I have an idea, she said. But it's dangerous. Everything is dangerous right now. What do you need? Permission to vent atmosphere from the cargo holds. There was a pause. Then Vance's voice came back, confused. How will that help? If I vent the atmosphere at the right angle, the escaping air will act like a thruster. It won't give us much extra speed, but every little bit helps. Another pause. Do it. Yuki opened the cargo hold vents. Air rushed out into space, adding a tiny push to the ship's momentum. It wasn't much, but it was something. On the bridge, Marcus Webb was performing miracles. The pilot's hands danced across the controls like he was playing a musical instrument. The Defiance twisted and turned, using every asteroid, every gravity well, every tiny advantage to stay ahead of the pursuing warships. They're firing, Cole reported. Energy beams lanced through space, missing the Defiance by meters. The small ship rolled and dove, dancing through the deadly light like a leaf in a hurricane. That was too close. Marcus muttered. He was sweating. His eyes were locked on the navigation display. They're getting better at predicting our movements. Then stop being predictable, Ilara said. Marcus laughed a wild, desperate sound. You want me to fly random? Fine. But don't blame me if we crash into an asteroid. He pushed the ship into a series of maneuvers so chaotic that even the crew was caught off guard. The artificial gravity fluctuated. People grabbed onto whatever was nearby. On the Sithani flagship, the tactical officers stared at their screens in confusion. The human ship was flying like its pilot had lost control. But that was the point. Hour after hour, the chase continued. The Defiance took hits. Small ones at first, then larger. A sensor array was destroyed. A section of hull was breached and sealed. The lights flickered and dimmed as power was diverted to shields and engines. Valkyra emerged from the medical bay despite Dr. Morrison's protests. She found her way to the bridge and stood in the corner, watching the humans work. They were dying. She could see it clearly. Their ship was falling apart around them. Their enemies were overwhelming. And yet they did not stop. They did not surrender. They fought with a desperate determination that she had never seen in any species. Why do you keep fighting? She asked Ilara during a brief moment of calm. You cannot win. Even I can see that. Ilara didn't look away from the tactical display. We're not trying to win. We're trying to survive. There's a difference. What difference? You will die either way. Maybe. But we're not dead yet. The 6th hour brought disaster. A direct hit struck the engine room. The blast killed 3 crew members instantly. Yuki Tanaka was thrown against a wall. She felt her arm break, felt blood streaming down her face, but she crawled back to her station and kept working. Engines are failing, she reported. Her voice was weak but steady. I can give you maybe 2 more hours of thrust. After that, we're dead in space. How far to Mira's Veil? Ilara asked. 3 hours, Cole replied grimly. We're not going to make it. Ilara closed her eyes. She had known this was possible. She had accepted the risk. But accepting your own death was different from accepting the death of your crew, of the people who had trusted her. Captain. Sarah Chen's voice broke through her thoughts. You need to see this. Ilara opened her eyes and looked at the communication console. What is it? I don't know how to explain it. Just look. The tactical display changed. New contacts were appearing on the edge of sensor range. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. They were coming from the direction of human space. And they were heading straight for the battle. Identify those ships, Ilara ordered. The computer processed the sensor data. Cole read the results, and his voice shook. They're ours, Captain. Human ships, freighters, mining vessels, passenger liners, cargo haulers, transport ships. He looked up with tears in his eyes. They're all ours. Ilara stared at the display. She didn't understand. None of these were military ships. They had no weapons. They couldn't fight. The communication console lit up with incoming messages. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Voices overlapping. All saying the same thing. Defiance. This is the freighter Morning Star. We heard your broadcasts. We're coming to help. This is the mining ship Iron Hammer. You're not alone out there, Captain. Passenger liner Silver Wind reporting. We have 3,000 civilians aboard, and every one of them voted to come. Hold on. We're almost there. Ilara couldn't speak. Her throat was too tight. The civilian ships arrived in a wave. They were not organized. They had no battle formation. But they flew directly between the Defiance and the Sithani warships, forming a wall of metal and humanity. On the flagship Eternal Dawn, Regent Zoreth stared at his tactical display in disbelief. What are they doing? He demanded. Those ships have no weapons. They cannot fight us. His tactical officer shook his head. I don't know, Regent. They're just sitting there. Then destroy them and continue the pursuit. The officer hesitated. Regent, there are thousands of civilians on those ships. If we fire on them, the entire galaxy will see. What do you mean? They're broadcasting. Every ship is transmitting live video to every corner of civilized space. Billions of beings are watching right now. Zoreth's face twisted with rage. He turned to the view screen. The human ships hung in space before him, fragile and defenseless. Their cameras pointed at his fleet. Their crews watched and waited. They were not fighting. They were witnessing. And they were daring him to become a monster in front of the entire galaxy. On the Defiance, Elara finally found her voice. She opened a channel to the civilian fleet. "This is Captain Vance. I don't know what to say. You shouldn't be here. This is too dangerous." A woman's voice answered. She sounded old and tired and absolutely unafraid. "Captain, my name is Hannah Chen. I'm Sarah's grandmother. I'm 83 years old, and I've lived a good life. When I heard what you were doing, I knew I had to come. Not because I wanted to fight, because I wanted to show the galaxy who we are." Other voices joined in. They told their stories. A father who wanted his children to grow up in a galaxy where people helped each other. A young couple on their honeymoon who had changed their plans. A retired teacher who had never done anything brave in his life and wanted to know what it felt like. They had come not to fight, but to stand, to witness, to say with their presence what words could not express. "We are here, we see you, and we will not look away." The Sithani fleet stopped. Zorath's face was purple with rage, but he did not give the order to fire. He could not with the whole galaxy watching. And the Defiance, battered and broken but still flying, slipped through the wall of civilian ships and continued toward Mira's Veil. They were going to make it. Mira's Veil was a city among the stars. The station had been built centuries ago by a species that no longer existed. It floated at the intersection of a dozen trade routes, claimed by no empire and protected by all. Wars had been fought across the galaxy, but Mira's Veil had always remained neutral, sacred, untouchable. The Defiance limped into the station's protective zone with smoke pouring from its engines and holes in its hull. 16 crew members were dead. Another 20 were wounded. The ship would never fly again, but they had made it. Valkyra stood at the viewport and watched the Sithani warships hover at the edge of the neutral zone. They could not enter. The ancient treaties were clear. Any vessel that attacked within the zone would face the combined wrath of every signatory species. Even Zorath was not mad enough to risk that. But that was not what held the princess's attention. She was watching the human ships. They had followed the Defiance all the way to the station. Hundreds of civilian vessels, battered and exhausted, their crews cheering as the small frigate crossed into safety. They had formed an honor guard for the last few kilometers. They had broadcast their journey to billions of viewers across the galaxy, and those viewers had responded. The feeds were exploding with reactions. Species that had ignored Valkyra's plea for help were now demanding action. Politicians who had voted for silence were being shouted down in public forums. The Conclave's communication systems were overloaded with messages from ordinary citizens who had watched ordinary humans risk everything for a stranger. "How can we call ourselves civilized?" the messages asked, "when these primitives show more courage than all our fleets combined?" Within hours, the first cracks appeared in the Galactic Order. A Valorian medical frigate broke from its assigned station and set course for Mira's Veil. Its captain announced that she could no longer remain silent while others suffered. 2 Cathari diplomats resigned from the conclave in protest. A Dothrani senator gave a speech that was broadcast across her entire federation, calling the decision to abandon Valkyra a stain on their species' honor. The wall of fear that had protected Zorath began to crumble, and then came the evidence. Valkyra released the contents of her data crystal. The information spread across the galaxy like fire. Recordings of Zorath's secret meetings with the Vorax Dominion, plans for conquest that would have enslaved dozens of worlds, lists of traitors and collaborators within the Scythani government. The reaction was immediate and devastating. Within the Scythani Empire, military commanders who had supported Zorath's coup began to question their loyalty. The evidence proved that their new regent had allied with the Vorax, an enemy that the Sithani had fought for centuries. Zorath had not just murdered his brother, he had betrayed his entire species. One by one, the warships at Mira's Veil turned away. Their captains refused to continue serving a traitor. By the end of the first day, only Zorath's flagship remained. By the end of the second day, even that was gone. On the third day, word came from Cythera. The Empress had been freed from her prison. The palace guards had turned against Zorath. The regent was dead, killed by his own followers when they learned the truth. Valkyra wept when she heard the news. She wept for her father, who had died trying to prevent this tragedy. She wept for her mother, who had survived but would carry the scars forever. And she wept for the humans who had saved her life, 16 of whom would never see their families again. The ceremony was held in the Great Hall of Mira's Veil. Valkyra stood before an assembly of diplomats, journalists, and citizens from 100 different species. She wore the formal robes of the Scythani imperial house, deep blue trimmed with silver. Her glow had returned, stronger than before, but she had asked for one change to the traditional protocol. Instead of standing above the crowd on a raised platform, she stood at ground level, equal to those around her, and before her stood Captain Ilara Vance. The human captain looked uncomfortable in her dress uniform. Her arm was in a sling. Bandages covered the burns on her hands, but she stood straight and proud, surrounded by the surviving members of her crew. "Captain Vance," Valkyra said, her voice carried across the silent hall. "I have struggled to find words that can express what you have done. In all the long history of the galaxy, I cannot find another example of a species risking so much for so little gain." Ilara shifted awkwardly. "We didn't do it for gain, Your Highness. I know. That is what makes it remarkable." Valkyra paused. "The Galactic Conclave refused to help me. They calculated the risks and decided I was not worth saving. They made the logical choice, the safe choice." She looked around the hall at the assembled delegates. Many of them could not meet her eyes, but you made a different choice. You saw a stranger in need and you answered, not because it was safe, not because it was logical, but because it was right. The new Empress of the Scythani Empire bowed deeply to the human captain. "I am in your debt. My people are in your debt. And the galaxy itself is in your debt." A murmur ran through the crowd. A Scythani Empress had never bowed to anyone. It was unheard of, impossible, and yet they had all witnessed it. Valkyra straightened. "I understand that Earth has been offered a seat on the Galactic Conclave. I hope you will accept it. The Conclave needs voices like yours." Ilara was quiet for a moment. Then she shook her head. "With respect, Your Highness, I can't accept on behalf of my government, but I can tell you what I told the Conclave's ambassador." She looked directly at the delegates in the hall. "We'll take a seat when you've earned it. When you've shown that you can act with courage instead of fear. When you've proven that your treaties actually mean something." She paused. "Until then, we'll be out here, doing what we've always done, helping whoever needs it." The hall was silent. Then, slowly, a strange sound began. It started with the human civilians who had come to Mira's Vale with the rescue fleet. They began to clap. Then others joined in. Valorians and Cathari and Dothrani, species that had never agreed on anything, were applauding together. Not for victory, not for power, but for something rarer, for hope. After the ceremony, Valkyra found Ilara alone on an observation deck. The captain was staring out at the stars, her expression distant. "You look troubled," Valkyra said, joining her at the window. 16 of my crew are dead," Ilara replied quietly. "Good people, young people. They died because I made a choice. They died because they believed in something. Because you gave them the chance to be heroes." Valkyra hesitated. "I have asked myself many times since you rescued me. Why did you do it? Why risk everything?" Ilara was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. "When I was a little girl, my grandmother told me a story. She said that the measure of a species isn't how they treat their friends. It's how they treat strangers. Anyone can be kind to people they love. But being kind to someone you've never met, someone who can't help you, someone who might even hurt you." She smiled sadly. "That's what separates the good from the great. Your grandmother sounds wise. She was. She died before humanity ever reached the stars. But I like to think she would have approved of what we did." Valkyra looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, her mother was rebuilding their empire. Somewhere out there, the Vorax were still waiting. The galaxy was still dangerous. The future was still uncertain. But something had changed. Something fundamental. "Your species is very strange," she said softly. "You are weak. You are primitive. You have no great fleets, no ancient technologies, no vast empires. And yet you accomplished what the entire conclave could not. We just did what anyone should have done." "No." Valkyra shook her head. "You did what no one else would do. And that has made all the difference." She reached out and touched Ilara's hand. Her skin was warm, glowing with soft blue light. "The galaxy will remember this day, Captain. They will remember that when the great powers looked away, when the ancient species chose fear over courage, humanity stepped forward. They will remember that you did not ask what you would gain. You asked only how you could help." Ilara looked at the Empress. "And what will you remember?" Valkyra smiled. It was the first real smile she had allowed herself since her father's death. I will remember a woman who answered a stranger's call, who risked her ship, her crew, and her entire species because it was the right thing to do. She squeezed Ilara's hand. I will remember a friend. The two women stood together at the viewport, watching the stars. Behind them, the galaxy was changing. The old order of fear and calculation was giving way to something new, something that burned brighter than any sun. It was called hope, and humanity had given it to the stars.